Hello, this is Photography Gamer. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm reviewing EA Sports UFC 4 for the PS4. The game is also available for the Xbox One. EA Sports UFC 4 is a mixed martial arts game developed by EA Vancouver. Mixed martial arts is a hybrid sport encompassing boxing, kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, wrestling and many other disciplines. So what is the game like to play? Well, combat is broken up into three areas: stand-up, clinching and the ground game. The stand-up is as fluid and satisfying as before, with jabs, hooks, uppercuts and a plethora of other moves available via multiple button combinations. Combos are easily achieved and you can bob, weave, block and taunt your opponent with ease. The biggest improvement in UFC 4 comes in the clinch game. Previously clinches were very stop-start and they lacked any fluidity. Well, that's all changed. Now you can seamlessly go from stand-up striking to clinch striking without any noticeable transition. You'll seamlessly switch from stand-up brawls to dirty boxing in the clinch. Finally, there is the ground game, which has always been a bit of a tricky area for computer games to recreate. And in UFC 4, the system hasn't changed a great deal. You press analog stick directions to change position, maneuver your opponent or initiate a submission move. It's a very clunky and awkward system and lacks the natural fluidity of the stand-up or the clinch combat. Submissions, however, have been improved with a more basic method of finishing or escaping a submission hold. The ground striking is good, but wrestling and jiu-jitsu seem to be the biggest problem with the UFC games. I'm not sure there's a definitive answer as to how you can fix this, but surely there must be a better way to implement it. The game features a large roster of current and legendary fighters from the UFC ranks. It's not a comprehensive list of current fighters, but the UFC does have a quick turnaround from nobody to star status, so hopefully the developers will keep on top of this as time goes by. There are some new arenas. The two most notable ones are, well, first you've got the Kimbo Slice and Jorge Masvidal inspired Backyard Brawl arena. And the second main one is the Kumite arena, which looks like something straight out of a Mortal Kombat game. To add some more fun, the cosmetic items are improved and you can have a bit more fun and silliness with your character creation in terms of clothing and styling. Okay, so what about game modes? Well, for PvP fans, you've got a seamless and quick mode that lets you and other players around the world duke it out. There's the online world championships and versus matches, but you can also set up an offline tournament and set up in your own sort of detail. And there are fun blitz battles with variable conditions per fight. But as with the previous game, it's the career mode where the UFC 4 game really does come into its own. You start by creating your new fighter, but the character creation tool hasn't changed a great deal. But saying that, they've added lots of new haircuts and beards, and you can again add hundreds of tattoos, it seems, if you really want to go full body tattoo arts. That's really good fun. So career starts with you brawling at low level events, then you get spotted by this trainer. Long story short, you work your way through the amateur ranks and hopefully you get a shot at the Dana White event, which leads to a UFC contract offer. For anyone who played the previous game on hard, don't worry, if you get cut by the UFC, the game doesn't give you a game over screen. This time you can go back to the lower rank organisation and try to work your way back to the big show. One thing that has changed in career mode is how your fighters' moves level up. The more you use a particular move, whether it's a jab, hook, kick, whatever, the more effective it will become in future. And it makes perfect sense, as naturally the more you drill a certain skill, the more dangerous it should become. This really makes the career mode feel more lifelike, whereas before it felt like you were just number crunching, upgrading one stat. Here, it's all about repetition, and what you use is going to get better. Your fighter evolves with time and experience, and you can spend points on attributes, moves and perks. A star system has been implemented this time, replacing the number-based model, and it's a lot simpler and more streamlined. The UFC will offer you fixed-term contracts with, say, 3 fights to prove your worth. Do well and you climb the ranks, do bad, you may get cut altogether. You can choose to accept or refuse fights. You can get injuries in training camps, get involved in social media spats with other fighters, and even knock out your training partner as you stream it to the world. But be careful not to knock them out in week 1 of your camp, or you might have no one left to spar with. You can invite fighters to your camp to learn new moves, obtain sponsorships, and even get messages from Dana White when your opponent gets injured and you're offered a last-minute replacement. I'd say it's one of the best career modes in any sports game, as it not only recreates the fight game to a high standard, but it takes on board all the things like physical conditioning, training drills, and social media. But the career doesn't go on forever, and your longevity depends on how much punishment you take during the career. If you've got a career full of grueling fights and sustain massive damage in each of them, your fight career is going to end prematurely. But if you're coy and tactical, you'll be able to go on for a much longer career as champion and eventually becoming the GOAT. Graphically, you'd be forgiven for thinking you're playing the same game that came out in 2018. The character models, arenas, and the crowds all look remarkably similar, and it doesn't really feel like they've done any visual work on the actual gameplay. The menus, however, have been improved from the dry and bland UFC 3 ones, but on the whole, I was pretty disappointed with how little has changed visually. In terms of the sound effects during fights and the in-game music, it's as good as it was before. You've got a wide range of official music that's great if you love hip-hop. The one major change to the audio in UFC 4 is the in-fight commentary. Jon Anik and Daniel Cormier pair up to fulfill the fight calling, but the pair sadly aren't able to compensate for the omission of the UFC staple commentator Joe Rogan. Jon Anik is a great anchor, but Daniel Cormier, he just doesn't have the charisma or vocal range to carry off the co-coms. Okay, what's good and what's bad? What's good? The stand-up clinch game has been improved with a more fluid interpretation, the submission system has been simplified, the career mode improvements help with the longevity, as does the way your character evolves depending on what moves you use most frequently. What's bad? The graphics haven't improved despite there being a 2-year gap between this and its predecessor. The commentary is a massive downgrade from UFC 3. The ground game is still a muddled and awkward system. It's a little bit too similar to the previous game to warrant the $60 price tag, and the face creator is awkward and clunky to use. So what's the verdict? EA Sports UFC 4 is a quality combat sports simulation that recreates the multiple disciplines involved in mixed martial arts. For the most part, it does a great job, but there are still issues with the ground game, wrestling, and jiu-jitsu. But at least they've improved the stand-up clinching, and the alterations to the progression system in career mode are intuitive and well thought out. Add to that the simple submissions, and I'd say they've made the game more accessible to newcomers to the sport. But it does feel a little bit light on improvements considering it's been 2 years since the last game. Add to that the graphics haven't really changed, and the in-fight commentary feels empty without Joe Rogan going crazy every time someone throws one punch. So overall, some things are better, some things are worse. In the end, I'd say it's on a par with UFC 3, but perhaps lacks the quality of life improvements for the ground game we were all hoping for. But it's still the best sports fight game out there. To be honest, it's the only fight sports game out there, but very enjoyable and satisfying once you get to grips with it. So my score for EA Sports UFC 4 is 8.5 out of 10. Okay, that was the review. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. This is Photography Gamer signing off. Thank you.